Socialism, communism, social ownership.
Welcome back to the Adam and Sheridan Show video podcast. We were on hiatus last week.
We were.
Except for the fact that you did a beautiful 2-minute apology for us not being on YouTube.
I did the most ridiculous video. I made a fake quote at the end of me apologizing for it. It was fun, and I determined I want to get better at cinematography, so I determined to just do something every week. And so that nonsense is what came out of it. I got a very odd comment on it from Kenny. Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you, Kenny, for being
for commenting, for being our
yes.
stalwart
I think
commenter.
almost everything that we've done, whether it's our show or these little YouTube things, YouTube things that we knock off effortlessly, you've commented on. So we thank you very much, Kenny. And thank you, Sheridan, for filling in for our missed show last week.
Yeah, I was so worried that I was going to post it and you were going to come back going, take this down. It's an embarrassment to people.
Yeah,
it's an embarrassment to people.
Has this show been anything but professional?
Yes.
So anyway,
everything but
we're making a lot of jokes, but this is a serious week, unfortunately.
This is.
Bradley Manning is in the news, and there's all kinds of things in the news. But Bradley Manning is in the news. He unfortunately was convicted of the most serious charges he was convicted of was espionage, which of course is a ridiculous thing to
from the World War I Espionage Act. He was found innocent, and in the military tribunal, he was found innocent, but he was found innocent of aiding the enemy and apparently the collateral damage video. But everything else he was found guilty of. He pled guilty to a number of things, hoping to get leniency. But the sentencing is going to commence with 40 witnesses, and it's possibly going to take all of August. So
we don't know what it is yet.
Keep watching, yeah.
He could face up to 136 years in jail. There's been a lot of phrases like free Bradley Manning. At this point, there's only one way to free Bradley Manning, and that is for us to storm the Bastille, or storm where he's being...
Good reference. Good reference.
Storm where he's staying and just get him out of there.
I felt the urge to high-five you, but I knew it wouldn't happen.
Well, it kind of goes with our French-themed radio show, because we played Brigitte Bardot music on the radio show.
We played the worst stuff.
No, it was great. You stand by your own words. I think it was great.
It was interesting.
Yes.
It was interesting.
So if you don't like
goodness.
if you don't like the music, let us know, and it's my fault.
Yep.
AdamandSheridanShow
at gmail.com. We also have to mention that getting 1 year asylum in Russia is Edward Snowden.
So
he has now
news.
moved out of the airport. He is no longer Tom Hanks in
the terminal.
And
at least he can take a real shower and live in a somewhat private environment. Of course, he doesn't know the Russian language, but he's learning. His life is a very difficult language. His life is a little bit safer now, but of course, the fact remains he's still what amounts to exile. He's still in exile in Russia because he revealed criminality by the U.S. government, and apparently the U.S. government doesn't take too kindly to that. So he had to flee.
Yeah, and we mentioned on the radio show, WRFALP.com, and of course on SoundCloud and WRFALP.wordpress.com you'll be seeing. But we mentioned on the radio show what this could mean as far as the politics of why Russia is doing this. But we want to talk about Matty Schaefer.
He's a good friend of mine from Wisconsin.
Yes, and he commented, or he sent us a message, and he was trying to understand the differences in the reconcilability of anarchism and socialism, because I'm highly informed by anarchism, and Adam is a dirty Trotskyist. So,
meaning Trotsky himself was quite clean. I personally don't bathe.
But we get along a lot, and we've had some knockdown, drag out, scream arguments. Not screaming at each other, but just talking in such a fervent way.
It always ends in ice cream eating too.
It does. It does, and some ice cream wearing. So But he asked questions, and he asked very, very good questions.
And
so we want to go over that. I've got my laptop here a little bit. So he says, socialism is a form of economy where the public owns and manages the resources of society, while anarchism is a political ideology where individuals govern their own selves and freely group to produce social wealth. I want to make the first distinction here. I don't believe that any radical believes that economy and politics can be extracted.
Or separated.
Yeah. Marx, thank you for giving me a word.
Sure.
Marx himself talked about political economy. So these two, once you change economic systems or once you change economic circumstances, you inevitably change the social political reality. And I also want to mention that while we're speaking of anarchism, we're speaking of a more traditional type of anarchism. We are not speaking of American right libertarianism or anarcho-capitalism. So James, this does not apply to you. James, friend of the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also, not James Bliss, who used to do the headlines.
Not James Bliss. Yep.
There's a few points that he made about socialism which were correct, but there's a few that he made that, in my opinion, were not correct. And again, this is just my opinion.
But he was,
my understanding of
I
socialism.
do want to say that he was very much
He's done
better
some research.
informed, than most of society.
Yeah,
so
he's really done, and I'm very impressed.
Congrats, yeah.
A couple of things, though, which I agree with some of the things he said, but there's a few things that, to my understanding, were not correct. I'm not saying that I'm the end-all and be-all on Marxism. Of course, I'm still learning like everyone else. But my understanding is, one thing that you said was that socialism necessarily has to be a centralized command economy where a government is popularly elected, but once it's elected, it's kind of an unaccountable bureaucracy where it just dictates how things are planned and how things are executed. That's actually not true. It's a very dynamic system. What happens is there's worker councils all throughout the country, and yes, there is a committee that is centrally located that helps facilitate all of these different ideas that are going on between all these workers' councils. But ultimately, in order for the system to work, there is a pipeline of information going on from all of these workers' councils across the country. So let's say you have a workers' council in Western New York or in southeastern Wisconsin that says, we need this much electricity in this area, in this part of the country, or we need this much bread, or we need this much wheat, or whatever. That information is given to
the Grand Soviet,
the whatever you want to call it, to give into the planning committee, and then that information is used to plan distribution. The opposite of that is what we're against as socialists, which is having a central committee that, once elected, is completely unaccountable.
And that's the thing. It's an organizing central committee. It's not a dictating central committee, which was largely the problem with Stalinism. Now, he's talking about a more orthodox Soviet model. But there are notable exceptions to this, which believe that we have the organizational capacity now with capitalist systems, though we should move away from it, like David Harvey. So also, anarchism isn't, he makes assertions that anarchists believe that governments make people weak. It's not a radical individualism. Anarchists believe that capitalism, as well as top-down government, is an oppressive and incorrect way to govern people and to organize society, but they don't believe in absolute no organization and every man for themselves. They believe that each person should be free to live as they wish, but organizing things in so that everyone is provided for. So no one has to sell their labor, no one has to be under the boot of anybody else. And I think one of the major points, because we're losing time, one of the major points that I want to make is that socialism and anarchism, in a grand way, have the same goal. The end goal is full communism and free association and people living up to their potentiality and being free to live in the way that they
with no government
believe.
and no classes.
Yes, no government and no classes. And that is the goal. That is the goal of main orthodox trends of both ideologies. It's just anarchism believes in a more prefigurative means to that end, whereas socialism believes in its own kind of steps to the goal.
Basically, in other words, socialism takes as its starting point the end of capitalism. So in other words, you can't just jump from a capitalist mode of production to a communist mode of production. You have to say, okay, we've had a socialist revolution, now the workers are in control, but we have to take what we have now, which is structures which are capitalist in nature, and we have to begin to wither those away. So the first thing we do is, let's say, we nationalize giant banks and the largest corporations, but we still keep small businesses, and we allow small business owners to still run those businesses for a profit.
Yep.
Small depositors still keep their money. That doesn't go to the central planning committee. And we use the resources of the banks and the wealthy corporations to put workers to work, but they're still working for a wage. And then the thought is, over generations, that kind of mentality begins to wither away once it becomes clear that there's such a superabundance of wealth, and the standard of living of people rise. Then the thought is that over time, people will begin to see how inefficient capitalism really was.
And anarchism says, no, you're stupid, let's do it faster. He does
Is that
actually
really what
talk.
it says?
No. It's a
I
lot
hope
more
not,
complicated
yeah.
than that. Please read Marxists.org. It has a large selection of Marxist writers in different traditions, and it's also got a small selection, but a very good selection, of anarchist writers. So please check out that. Read the first sources. Read up as much as you can if you're interested in the politics. They have a lot of good ideas on wage labor and things like that, but this is a conversation that is still going on. There are large anarchist pockets in the country, large socialist pockets in the country, and unfortunately they don't talk because some of these discussions are very hard. Adam and I have had them, and we don't agree on everything, but it's good to have. Thanks for writing in. Honestly,
I will say this.
Discussion.
And I haven't asked Matt about this, but my sense is that he's beginning to realize that under the current political setup, it is impossible for justice to take place. I mean, under the current political setup, we now have two people that have exposed rampant criminality, and both of them are either on the run or already in jail. So I think Matt is looking for alternative forms of political and economic setup, because he realizes that right now there is such utter corruption that simply lobbying the current elected representatives, or even electing new representatives under the current political setup, will not work.
It's not gonna work.
It
Yeah.
will not work.
All
and I
right.
think that Matt realizes that. So thank you, Matt.
And let us know what you thought of our answers. We gave him some privately. We gave some on the radio. Again, we gave the links to that, but please listen to our radio, 107.9 FM, on Fridays at 6, Sundays at 11 a.m. Catch us on Facebook.
Yep. We can also, and Matt, by the way, caught us on Facebook.
He
so
did
it
catch us on
worked.
Facebook. Like our page. We're up to
Yeah.
60-something.
No, we're up to 82.
82?
82, yeah.
Oh.
You haven't been paying
I'm
attention.
bad with numbers.
You're a sad
I'm
sack.
terrible with numbers.
Also, we're available on Twitter. You can tweet us. AdamandSheridanShow at gmail.com is our email. There's all
And that's
kinds
the
of
best
ways.
way to get to us.
I'm Adam Courtwright. Thank you for watching.
I'm Sheridan. Stay active. The one of the two things that he was found innocent of is aiding the enemy and the collateral damage video in whatever way that means.
That is
We got a
the
printer.
That's the printer, which means that we're going to have someone coming.
We're gonna have a
and getting
special
it.
guest.
Yeah.
That's gonna be all right. But
Should we stop it?
should we stop it?
I think so.
Oh, this should be all right.
Cut.
Yeah, we'll cut. We'll cut.
That's okay. Don't worry.
It's gonna be happening. Hey, it's a video.
No, we'll restart. Don't worry. We're only a minute and a half in.
Yep. It's all right.
Keep her rolling.
That minute and a half was gold.
Oh
minute and a
man,
half
we're never
was
gonna get that
awesome.
back now.
You can always get it back.
Yep.
All right.
Bye, guys.
See you later.
Start
Special
over.
guest, Len Berry.
Start over.
But I know we're going to be starting over again. Okay,
You wanna
start
just-
the clock.
Yeah, restart the clock.
Reset. Start, and to make it easy,